Unexpected bond. The diplomatic shuttle shuddered as it breached Virilia's atmosphere, rattling Captain Maya Chen against her restraints. Outside the viewports, the alien planet's twin moons hung like watchful eyes against a burnt orange sky. She wasn't supposed to be here alone. The mission briefing had called for a team of 5 diplomats, but the escalating tensions had forced Earth Command to scale back the delegation to just 1 representative. "Just don't start an interstellar war," Admiral Carey had joked during her final briefing. At least, she hoped he was joking. Maya checked her reflection in the shuttle's polished interior panel, adjusting her formal diplomatic uniform. Dark blue with silver accents, the Earth Diplomatic Corps' insignia displayed prominently on her chest. Her short black hair was neatly combed, and her expression carefully composed to hide the anxiety churning inside her. "Captain Chin, we're approaching the landing zone," the shuttle AI announced. "Virilian escort vessels have taken flanking positions." Maya nodded, peering through the viewport at the sleek, organic-looking ships that had appeared alongside them. Unlike human vessels with their angular, mechanical design, Virilian ships resembled predatory sea creatures, their hulls flowing in curved lines that somehow managed to look both beautiful and threatening. "Status on local communications," she asked. "All channels open but silent, Captain. They're watching us." The shuttle descended toward an enormous platform extending from what appeared to be a living structure, a massive complex that pulsed with bioluminescent veins running through its surface. Unlike human architecture, which imposed itself upon the landscape, Virilian structures seemed to grow from it, integrating with the surrounding environment. As the shuttle settled onto the landing pad with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure, Maya took a deep breath, centering herself. First contact with the Virilians had occurred 3 years earlier, but relations had been strained at best, hostile at worst. Earth needed allies, not enemies, especially with the Arcturus Collective expanding their territory at an alarming rate. The shuttle door slid open, and Maya stepped onto alien soil. The air smelled of something like cinnamon and ozone. Strange, but not unpleasant. A delegation of tall, imposing figures waited several meters away. The Virilians stood nearly 2 meters tall, with sleek bodies covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with their movements. Their faces were almost feline, with vertical slit pupils and eyes that ranged from amber to violet. But it wasn't the aliens that made Maya's breath catch. It was what stood beside them. Massive creatures flanked the delegation, resembling Earth's ancient dragons in basic form, but clearly the product of advanced biological engineering. Their muscular bodies rippled with visible tech implants beneath scaled skin, eyes glowing with artificial intelligence. Neural interfaces linked them to their Virilian companions, a symbiotic relationship that made them the most formidable combat units in this sector of the galaxy. One creature stood out, larger than the others, with obsidian scales and piercing golden eyes. It stood beside a female Virilian whose armor marked her as a high-ranking military officer. "Captain Maya Chen," Maya announced, placing her right hand over her heart in the formal human greeting. "Representative of Earth and the Sol Alliance." The female Virilian stepped forward, her scales shifting from purple to a deep blue. "Commander Xilara, First Talon of the Virilian Defense Force." Her voice had an unusual harmonic quality, as if 2 people were speaking in perfect unison. "You are alone." Maya nodded. Recent developments required a change in plans. "Your superiors send a single diplomat to negotiate terms with the Virilian Empire." Silara's head tilted slightly, her expression unreadable to human eyes. "Either humans are more foolish than we believed or braver." "Perhaps both," Maya replied with a slight smile. "We contain multitudes." Xilara didn't return the smile, but the massive creature beside her, her combat beast, shifted, its golden eyes focusing on Maya with unexpected intensity. Maya felt something brush against her consciousness, like fingers lightly touching a windowpane, seeking entry. Xilara snapped something in the Virilian language, and the creature, Maya now noticed the name Crixus embedded in its neural interface, reluctantly broke its gaze. "You will follow," Silara commanded, turning sharply. "The council awaits." Maya fell into step behind the commander, acutely aware of Crixus's massive form, now walking directly behind her. The sensation of being watched by a predator raised the hairs on her neck, but curiously, she felt no fear, only a strange sense of recognition. The Virillian capital was even more impressive from inside. Structures that appeared grown rather than built rose around them, interconnected by walkways that adjusted their shape as people moved across them. Bioluminescent lighting pulsed in rhythm with movement, as if the entire city were a massive organism responding to stimuli. They entered a vast chamber where 7 Virillians sat in a semicircle on elevated platforms. Their scales displayed a rainbow of colors, signifying different clans or castes within Virillian society. Maya recognized the setup, a deliberate power play to make her feel small and vulnerable. She prepared for this. As she stood before the council, Maya activated her neural implant, accessing the diplomatic quirk database. Information flooded her consciousness: Virillian customs, hierarchy structures, formal address protocols, all while maintaining her composed exterior. "The human envoy," announced Silara, stepping aside. Maya bowed precisely to the depth that would convey respect without subservience. "Esteemed council, I bring greetings from Earthhand." A commotion interrupted her carefully prepared speech. Crixus had moved from its position beside Silara and was approaching Maya, ignoring its handler's sharp commands. The council members rose in alarm as the massive creature stopped directly in front of Maya. To everyone's shock, Maya's included, Crixus lowered its head in what could only be described as a bow. The chamber erupted in chaos. Guards moved forward, weapons drawn. Silara shouted orders, her scales flaring bright crimson in what Maya's implant identified as extreme agitation or anger. Maya stood frozen, uncertain what was happening or how to respond. Then, acting on instinct rather than protocol, she slowly raised her hand toward Crixus. "Captain Chen, do not move," Silara ordered, but it was too late. Maya's fingers made contact with Crixus's scaled head, and the world exploded in sensation. Images flooded her mind, memories that weren't hers, emotions too complex to name, and beneath it all, a deep, resonant connection that felt both alien and strangely familiar. When reality reasserted itself, Maya found herself surrounded by armed guards, Silara's face inches from hers, scales pulsing with rage and confusion. "What have you done?" the commander demanded. Maya, still reeling, could only shake her head. "I don't know." "Detain the human," ordered one of the council members, "and isolate Crixus for examination." As guards seized her arms, Maya caught a final glimpse of the creature being led away. Their eyes met across the chamber, and that strange sensation returned. A connection bridging species, technology, and biology in a way that should have been impossible. Silara's voice cut through Maya's confusion. "You will explain this, human, or you will never leave Virilia alive." The detention cell was, like everything in the Virillian capital, both beautiful and intimidating. The walls pulsed with soft bioluminescence, but Maya had already discovered they were stronger than steel and responded to Virillian biosignatures only. She'd been there for what her implant calculated as approximately 26 Earth hours, with minimal interaction beyond the delivery of food and water. The cell door finally dissolved, revealing Commander Silara. Her scales had settled into a deep blue-green that Maya's database couldn't definitively interpret. "You will come with me," she said without preamble. Maya stood, smoothing her now rumpled uniform. "Am I being executed, or have you scheduled more questioning first?" Silara's eyes narrowed. "Your attempt at humor is noted but unnecessary. The situation is unprecedented." "That makes 2 of us," Maya replied. "I'd like to know what happened as much as you do." They walked through corridors that seemed to shift subtly around them, eventually arriving at a laboratory-like space where several Virillians in different colored garments were gathered around holographic displays. In the center of the room, visible through a transparent barrier, was Crixus. The combat beast paced restlessly, occasionally pressing against the barrier in Maya's direction. "Your neural patterns," Silera stated, gesturing to one of the displays that showed two brain scans side by side. "They are compatible with Crixus's neural interface. This should be biologically impossible." Maya stepped closer to the display, her scientific curiosity temporarily overriding her diplomatic concerns. "You're saying I somehow connected with your combat beast's control system?" "Not merely connected," corrected one of the Virillian scientists. "Bonded. The neural pathways are forming a symbiotic link." His scales rippled with what Maya interpreted as scientific excitement. "In all our history, no non-Virillian has ever established such a connection." Maya glanced at Crixus, who had stopped pacing and was watching her intently. "I don't understand. I have basic neural implants for information access and communication, but nothing designed for interspecies interface, which makes this even more concerning," Silera said. "Crixus is not just any combat beast. He is my personal guard, genetically keyed to my neural signature." Her voice lowered. "And he has rejected that bond in favor of you." The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. No wonder Silera seemed personally offended. This wasn't just a diplomatic incident, it was a profound personal affront. "I didn't do this deliberately," Maya said carefully. "I had no intention of interfering with your bond." "Intentions are irrelevant," Silera replied sharply. "Results are what matter. And the result is that my combat beast now responds to you." One of the scientists approached, displaying another holographic readout. "Commander, the comparative analyses are complete. The human's neural architecture contains anomalies we've never observed in their species before, specifically resonance patterns similar to our own chord." Maya's translator struggled with the final word, rendering it as chord, but flagging it as inadequate. From context, she gathered it referred to some aspect of Virillian neurology crucial to their bond with the combat beasts. "Is that possible?" Silera asked, her attention momentarily diverted from Maya. "Theoretically, no," the scientist replied. "But empirically, we cannot deny what we're observing. Somehow, this human possesses neural patterns that mimic our chord enough to establish a bond." Maya cleared her throat. "Perhaps if you explained what this chord is, I might help understand why." "Silence," Silera cut her off. "This information is classified at the highest level." The commander turned away, conferring quietly with the scientists. Maya couldn't hear their conversation, but the rapid color changes in their scales suggested an intense debate. Finally, Silera approached again. "The Council has reached a decision. You will work with our scientists to understand this anomaly. If it proves to be a natural phenomenon rather than Earth subterfuge, it could alter certain assumptions." "And if it doesn't?" Maya asked. Silera's scales briefly flashed a color Maya hadn't seen before, something between silver and white. "Then your diplomatic mission will fail in ways your people cannot imagine." Before Maya could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. The scientists scattered to monitoring stations as Silera pressed her hand against a living console. "Report," she commanded. "Perimeter breach in Sector 7, came the response. "Multiple hostiles. They've disabled the outer defenses." Silera's scales rippled with rapid color changes. "Rebellion faction," she hissed. "They've been growing bolder, but an attack on the capital." She turned to Maya. "You will return to your cell." "Wait," Maya said. "If Crixus is responding to me now, wouldn't I be more useful? Do not presume to insert yourself into Virillian matters." Silera snapped. "Guards, escort the human to secure containment." As two guards moved to take Maya's arms, Crixus suddenly roared, the sound so powerful it physically vibrated the barrier containing him. The combat beast threw himself against the transparent wall, which began to show fracture patterns. Containment failing. shouted one of the scientists. "Sedate him," Silara ordered. But before anyone could act, the entire facility shook with the force of an explosion. Lights flickered, and several systems went offline. In the momentary chaos, the barrier containing Crixus failed. The massive creature burst free, sending Virillian scientists scattering. Guards raised weapons, but Silara shouted, "Hold fire. We cannot risk damaging him." Crixus ignored everyone, moving directly to Maya. Instead of attacking, the combat beast lowered its head to her level, golden eyes locked with hers. The mental connection from earlier returned, stronger this time. Maya felt Crixus's intentions with startling clarity. Protection, alliance, urgent need. "They're coming here," Maya said, somehow understanding what Crixus was communicating. "The rebels. They knew about me, about us. That's why they're attacking now." Silara stared at her, scales shifting between disbelief and alarm. "How could you possibly know?" Another explosion rocked the facility, closer this time. Emergency systems engaged, sealing doorways and rerouting power. "Commander," Maya said urgently, "I don't understand what's happening between me and Crixus any more than you do, but right now, it might be the only advantage we have." For a tense moment, Silara said nothing, her alien features unreadable. Then, as the sound of weapons fire echoed down the corridor, she made her decision. "If this is deception, human, you won't live to regret it." She turned to what remained of her team. "Prepare for defensive positioning." And she looked back at Maya with obvious reluctance. "Give the human access to Crixus's combat systems." As the rebels closed in, Maya placed her hand on Crixus's neural interface, and the world transformed around her. Human and alien, diplomat and warrior, they faced the coming storm together. An impossible partnership that would change two species forever. Alliance forged. Maya's consciousness expanded beyond her physical form as the neural link with Crixus deepened. It wasn't like piloting a vehicle or issuing commands to a subordinate. It was a partnership, two minds functioning as complementary parts of a whole. Through Crixus's enhanced senses, she perceived the world differently. Ultraviolet patterns became visible, scents carried complex information, and subtle vibrations through the floor revealed the approaching rebels' positions. "They're coming from 3 directions," Maya said, the information flowing effortlessly from Crixus to her. "Main corridor, ventilation system, and there's a breach forming in the east laboratory wall." Silara's scales flashed with surprise before she barked orders to her remaining guards. "Defensive formation Nebula 6. Protect the research data." "Commander," Maya continued, "their primary target is the Neural Research Lab. They're specifically hunting for something called the Genesis Chord." Her translator struggled with the concept, but Crixus' understanding filled the gaps in her comprehension. Silara's head snapped toward Maya, her scales momentarily blanching to pale blue. "That information is classified at the highest level." "How did you?" She cut herself off, glancing at Crixus. "The bond is deeper than we thought." "You can question me later," Maya said as Crixus growled, detecting approaching hostiles. "Right now, we need to move." The first wave of attackers burst through the eastern wall, Virillians whose scale patterns have been altered to display unfamiliar sigils. They carried weapons that seemed to be grown, rather than manufactured, organic technology that hummed with deadly energy. Maya had received basic combat training as part of her diplomatic preparation, but nothing that prepared her for this. Yet through her connection with Crixus, she accessed combat knowledge accumulated through years of warfare. Without conscious thought, she moved in perfect coordination with the massive creature, as if they'd trained together for years. "The data cores," Maya shouted to Silara as Crixus intercepted 2 attackers, disabling them with precise strikes. "They're carrying some kind of data extraction parasites." Silara didn't waste time questioning how Maya knew this. She adjusted her strategy, moving to protect the central database terminal. "Secure the primary research node," she ordered her guards. The battle that followed was chaotic, but strangely coordinated. Maya and Crixus moved as one, the combat beast's physical power complemented by Maya's tactical reasoning. She could anticipate the attacker's movements through Crixus's enhanced senses, guiding the creature to intercept threats before they materialized. Zelura fought with remarkable skill, her movements fluid and precise as she disabled attackers with a combination of hand-to-hand combat and targeted energy bursts from her weapons. Despite their adversarial relationship, Maya found herself admiring the commander's battlefield prowess. "Behind you," Maya called out as her connection with Crixus revealed a hidden attacker emerging from a concealed passage. Zelura spun, barely avoiding a lethal strike. Her eyes met Maya's for a brief moment, surprise, perhaps even grudging appreciation, before she neutralized the threat with a precision strike. As quickly as it had begun, the attack subsided. The remaining rebels retreated, leaving behind their wounded and dead. Facility security protocols engaged, sealing breached areas and restoring power to damaged sections. In the aftermath, Maya found herself sitting on the floor, physically exhausted but mentally exhilarated. The neural connection with Crixus remained active, but had settled into a more sustainable state, like background music rather than an overwhelming symphony. Zelura approached, her scales now a steady deep blue. She studied Maya for a long moment before speaking. "You saved lives today," she finally said, "including mine." Maya nodded, too tired for diplomatic niceties. "It wasn't just me. It was us." She glanced at Crixus, who had positioned himself protectively beside her. "The Council must be informed of these developments," Zelura continued. "We depart for the High Capital immediately." "Am I still a prisoner?" Maya asked. Zelura's scales rippled briefly. "You are. An anomaly. One that requires further investigation at the highest levels." She paused. "But no, not a prisoner. Consider yourself a guest under protective supervision." "That's diplomat speak for comfortable detention," Maya said with a tired smile. "I should know." Something resembling amusement flickered across Zelura's alien features. "Perhaps our species have more in common than previously assessed." The journey to the Virillian High Capital took 3 planetary rotations aboard Zelura's command vessel. Maya spent much of that time in a specially designed chamber that allowed her to rest, while scientists monitored her neural patterns and the evolving bond with Crixus. The combat beast remained close, refusing to return to its regular containment area. This arrangement clearly disturbed many of the Virillian crew, whose scales would flash with alarm whenever they encountered the human and beast together. On the final day of their journey, Zelura requested Maya's presence in the ship's observation deck. The commander stood before a vast viewport that revealed the approaching High Capital, an immense structure that appeared to be a blend of technology and biology, a living city grown around what looked like an ancient asteroid or small moon. "It's beautiful," Maya said as she joined Zelura at the viewport, Crixus following close behind. "It is the heart of our civilization," Zelura replied. 10,000 years of Virillian achievement." She turned to face Maya. "Few outsiders have ever been permitted to see it." Maya recognized the statement for what it was. An olive branch, or whatever the Virillian equivalent might be. "I'm honored," she said sincerely, "though I wish the circumstances were different." Zelura was silent for a moment, her scales shifting through subtle variations of blue and green. "The circumstances are unprecedented," she finally said, "which is why I must prepare you for what comes next." "The High Council," Maya guessed. "Yes, they will want to understand what happened between you and Crixus, but more importantly, they will want to know if it threatens our security." Zelura's voice lowered. "The bond you share with Crixus touches on our most closely guarded technological and biological secrets." Maya nodded slowly. "The Genesis cord that the rebels were after." "Yes." Zelura seemed to make a decision. "Our combat beasts are not merely bred and trained, Captain Chen. They are created through a process that merges Virillian neural patterns with genetically engineered creatures. The Genesis cord is the foundation of that process, the original neural template from which all bonds are derived. Maya processed this information, understanding its significance, and somehow my neural pattern is compatible with it, which should be impossible. Precisely, Silera confirmed. It suggests either an extraordinary coincidence of evolution or deliberate design. Maya finished. You're wondering if Earth somehow obtained your technology and engineered me as some kind of infiltration tool. Silera's scales flickered briefly. The thought has been considered. Maya sighed. I can assure you that's not the case, but I understand why you'd be suspicious. In your position, I would be too. The ship began its final approach to the high capital, the massive structure growing to fill the entire viewport. Docking structures extended from the living city like welcoming arms. There is another possibility, Silera said quietly, almost to herself, one that many would consider heretical. Before Maya could ask what she meant, an alert sounded throughout the ship. Silera moved swiftly to a communication panel, pressing her palm against its living surface. Report, she commanded. Commander, we're detecting multiple hostile signatures in pursuit, came the response. Rebel faction vessels, heavily armed. They've bypassed our outer sensor grid. Silera's scales flashed crimson. Battle stations, all personnel to defensive positions. She turned to Maya. The rebels are persistent. They must truly fear what your existence represents, or they're desperate to obtain it, Maya countered. If I can bond with your combat beasts, maybe others can too. That would change the balance of power, wouldn't it? Before Silera could respond, the ship rocked with the impact of enemy fire. Alarms blared as damage reports flooded in. Primary engines damage, reported a crew member. Shield integrity at 70% and falling. Return fire, Silera ordered. Evasive pattern delta. Maya felt Crixus tense beside her, the combat beast sensing her anxiety and responding to it. Through their connection, she could feel his desire to protect, to fight. Commander, Maya said suddenly, an idea forming. Does your ship carry combat deployment pods for Crixus and other beasts? Silera glanced at her sharply. Yes, but let me worry about them. This could change everything, Captain. Be careful. 36 hours later, the Defiance emerged from FTL on the dark side of Theros, a rocky world orbiting a red dwarf star. Theros had been colonized 20 years earlier for its rich mineral deposits, but had gained scientific interest when explorers discovered extensive ruins across its northern continent. Stealth systems engage, reported Commander Cato, Ilara's first officer. No Concord signatures in the system. Take us down, Commander. Keep us in the shadow of the mountain range. The Defiance descended through Theros' thin atmosphere, landing 3 kilometers from the excavation site. Ilara led a small team across the rocky terrain, the planet's dim red sun casting long shadows across the landscape. Dr. Maya Seto greeted them at the entrance to the excavation, her usually calm demeanor replaced with barely contained excitement. Captain, thank you for coming. You need to see this immediately. Sato led them through a series of tunnels that descended deep into the planet. The walls were lined with strange geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with a faint luminescence. These ruins were initially categorized as remnants of a long-extinct alien civilization, Sato explained as they walked. But 3 weeks ago, we discovered a sealed chamber that changed everything. They entered a vast circular room dominated by a central platform. The walls were covered with intricate symbols and diagrams that somehow felt familiar despite their alien appearance. This is the chamber, Sato said, her voice hushed with reverence. And this, she gestured to the symbols, is proto-human language, not alien, human, from over 50,000 years ago. That's impossible, Ilara said, echoing Admiral Zhang's reaction. Our species wasn't capable of this level of technology then. That's what historical records tell us, Sato agreed. But these ruins suggest a different story. She led them to a large console at the center of the room. We managed to activate this database 2 days ago. It contains historical records spanning thousands of years. The console illuminated, projecting images into the air above them. Star maps, vessel designs, and scenes of a vast human civilization spanning hundreds of worlds. According to these records, humanity wasn't born on Earth. Sato continued. We were a spacefaring civilization with technology far beyond what we possess now. A civilization that was systematically destroyed in a war with an alliance of species called the Conclave. The Conclave. Ilara's blood ran cold, not the Concord. The name translates slightly differently, but the member species listed here match those in the modern Galactic Concord. And there's more. Sato's fingers danced across the console. The war ended when the Conclave deployed a weapon, a wave of energy that affected neural pathways, essentially resetting human civilization. They'd relocated the survivors to Earth, erased their memories, and monitored their development to ensure they never again posed a threat. Ilara stared at the data scrolling before her, pieces falling into place. The Concord's guidance, the restrictions on human expansion, the ultimatum, the quantum displacement drive, she whispered. It's not new technology at all, is it? No, Sato confirmed. It's old, very old. Your Dr. Chen didn't invent it. She rediscovered it, and that's why the Concord is terrified. Humanity is remembering. Back on the Defiance, Ilara established a secure connection to Earth. The Council had convened an emergency session, with representatives from all 12 human colonies present either physically or via hologram. The evidence is conclusive, Ilara reported, transmitting the data from the ruins. We aren't newcomers to the galactic stage. We're survivors of a systematic attempt to erase our civilization. The council chamber erupted in shocked exclamations and heated discussions. President Adama of Earth raised a hand for silence. If what you found is true, Captain Voss, the Concord's ultimatum takes on a new meaning. They're not protecting the galaxy from us. They're protecting themselves from what we might remember. We need more time, said Representative Chen from Mars Colony. Time to verify this information, to understand what it means for our future. Time is the one thing we don't have. Admiral Zhang reminded them. The Concorde gave us 7 days. 3 have already passed. We could comply, suggested another representative. Surrender the drive technology, buy ourselves time to investigate further, and signal to the Concorde that we're still the obedient species they engineered us to be. Ilara couldn't keep the edge from her voice. The quantum drive is the key to reclaiming our independence. If we surrender it now, we may never get another chance. Commander, with respect, I think we can do this, Maya insisted. Crixus is faster than their targeting systems, and his armor can withstand a close approach. A pause, then. Proceed. But Captain Chen. Silara's voice softened almost imperceptibly. Return intact. The High Council will be most displeased if I deliver them only half of this mysterious bond to study. Maya smiled despite the danger. Understood, Commander. Crixus surged forward, his propulsion systems pushed to maximum output. They dodged enemy fire, weaving through the battlefield with a grace that belied the combat beast's massive size. Through their neural link, Maya could feel Crixus's confidence. This was what he was bred for, what he lived for. As they approached the rebel command ship, its main weapon began to glow with ominous energy. Targeting systems locked onto them, smaller defensive weapons firing in a desperate attempt to stop their approach. Now, Maya urged as they reached the optimal position. Crixus unleashed his primary weapon, a concentrated pulse of energy that struck the enemy ship's main emitter with pinpoint accuracy. The rebel weapon destabilized, energy cascading backwards through its systems. Pull back, Maya shouted, both vocally and through their link. Crixus executed a sharp turn, accelerating away from the command ship as secondary explosions began to ripple across its hull. The rebel vessel didn't explode dramatically. Virillian ships were too well designed for that. But its systems failed catastrophically, leaving it dead in space. Without their command ship, the rebel forces began to retreat, their coordinated attack dissolving into disorganized flight. Silara's vessel and its supporting ships pressed their advantage, disabling several more enemy craft before they could escape. "Well done, Captain Chin," Silara transmitted. "Return to ship. The way to the High Capital is clear." As Crixus carried them back toward Silara's vessel, Maya felt a profound sense of connection, not just with the combat beast, but with something larger. Whatever bound them together transcended species and biology. It felt ancient, important, and somehow meant to be. The High Council chamber was unlike anything Maya had ever seen. It wasn't merely a room, but a living entity, its walls pulsing with bioluminescence that responded to the emotional states of the 12 council members seated in a perfect circle. Above them, a dome of what appeared to be living crystal captured and amplified the light from Ferocious twin suns, bathing the proceedings in a golden glow. Maya stood in the center of the chamber, Crixus beside her. Silara stood at a respectful distance, her formal armor gleaming. The battle was barely 2 days past, but the commander had insisted they proceed immediately to this audience. "The human bond thief," one council member began, his scales a disapproving orange. "Honored council," Silara interjected with formal deference. "Evidence suggests the human did not deliberately initiate the bond, and her actions in the recent conflict merit consideration." Another council member leaned forward, her scales shifting to a curious blue-green. "Commander Silara speaks truly. Our scientists have confirmed the human possesses a natural neural pattern compatible with the Genesis cord. This was not manufactured." "Impossible," declared a third council member. "The Genesis cord is uniquely Virillian. And yet, the evidence stands before us," said another, gesturing to Maya and Crixus. The apparent leader of the council, distinguished by elaborate scale patterns and subtle cybernetic enhancements, raised his hand for silence. "Captain Maya Chen of Earth, you stand at the center of a mystery that touches the very foundation of our civilization. What say you in your defense?" Maya took a deep breath, her diplomatic training kicking in. "Honored council, I came to Virillia seeking alliance between our peoples against common threats. I did not expect or seek this bond with Crixus, but I cannot deny its reality." She placed her hand on Crixus's neural interface, the connection between them visible as subtle patterns of light beneath the combat beast's scales. "Through him, I have glimpsed aspects of your history and biology that suggest an answer to the mystery, if you are willing to consider it." Murmurs rippled through the council. The leader's scales shifted to an attentive purple. "Speak." "The Genesis cord," Maya said carefully, "is ancient, predating even Virillian space travel. Your legends speak of it as a gift from your gods. But what if it was something else? What if it was a branch of genetic development?